decoding the Charlie Kirk assassination. Not in the way that Dr. Corsi used to decode the Q nonsense. Not to hit on Dr. Corsi there, he's been through a lot. I do think that hurt his credibility though. I mean, he was a target of social engineers. It's funny. It's the same social engineers that are still around now. You know, one time I asked Dr. Corsi about that. He was making so much money from the super chats with the QAnon decodes. I said, Dr. Corsi, doesn't it seem like a sham to you? Like, why? He said, oh no, I have it on good authority from someone highly placed in the military. I think he was talking about Michael Flynn. He never told me, but that guy's definitely a social engineer. And there's all these social engineers who have been around for a long time. I didn't recognize it at first. It's tricky, but I've gotten pretty good at it. I think I've mentioned before, I did a show many years ago called Hillbilly Blood, and these guys who were the stars of the show, they could smell a leaf and tell you, oh, a deer went over that way. I've kind of gotten like that with these social engineers, but a lot of them are the same people. George Webb, his moron brother, Liz Crokin, this idiot Gary, Chris Martinson, they're all up to no good. A lot of people saw this dust up with Blake. I guess he's new to the mix. I didn't really know Blake before. I don't think I remember noticing him before the Charlie Kirk assassination. I mean, I had him blocked when people brought him to my attention. And so I unblocked him. I don't know. There's a lot of people that I block. You never know. But that's basically how they do it, right? They'll do something. They'll have Blake do something. And then someone else will be like, hey, look at this. And then you look at it and you get drawn into whatever they're doing. And they like to play tricks and they like to play games. Blake's latest trick and game is to say that I'm somehow threatening him and that because I called him at his office at a publicly published phone number, it's an advertised phone number. I called him during business hours at his office after Chris Martinson said, oh, Jason, you've been debunked. You got to give this $1,900. Well, I think he said whatever he thought the number was, $1,700. And I said, no, Chris, it's up to $1,900. People can go to crowdsourcethetruth.org. It's still up for grabs. If you haven't seen the phone call with Blake, he didn't want it. He didn't have the evidence to prove that he had debunked anything. It's up to $1,900. That is the evidence bounty. If you can disprove my thesis that Charlie Kirk was shot from behind and it was photographed at 240 frames per second. If you want to participate in this, if you want to goose the bounty, you can use your credit card, you can use cryptocurrency of your choice. Go in there, make it $3,000, make it $20,000. No expert in any field can refute this hypothesis. At least none of them have. I'm saying that. We've got 3 so-called experts right here who think they're smarter than me. And I'll tell you, out of the 3 of them, I might be most disappointed in John because he's got my phone number. If he doesn't understand what I'm talking about, why wouldn't he call me up and say, wait a minute now, I've known you for 8 years. You don't make these kind of bold claims unless you've got good evidence and are really convinced. What is it that I don't understand? Because I would have explained it to him. But he's being kind of a jerk now. So I'm going to explain it to everybody, and he's going to look foolish. All of these guys are going to look foolish. There's 3 people down there in that thumbnail. And also, I would remind people, if they value what I'm talking about and what I'm doing, and they want me to keep doing it, I need your support and sponsorship. The goal of these social engineers is to knock me off of the internet, shut down all my Twitter accounts, mass report them so that I get sensitive content bans and the things I put out don't reach anybody. They want to shut down my YouTube channels. George's brother has been doing this for 9 years. They want to sue me into submission. So sponsor the show. You can do it on crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com. It's $5 a month. You can go to subscribestar.com or patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. You can go to X on X. You can follow me at JG_CSTT and subscribe there to sponsor the show and access the sponsor exclusive content, even if you don't subscribe on X, all over, YouTube, everywhere. You can hear this phone call with professional idiot Blake, and people will say, oh, don't call people idiots. I like this, Fantastic Four, early for Halloween, but it's a good costume, man. That's the Fantastic Four. I guess he's going to a Halloween party, but it's a little early. Point is, Chris Martenson did a debate, and I did it in good faith. You know, I always want to give these guys the benefit of the doubt until it's just irrefutable that they're malicious liars. Because if you just right away say, this person's a spook, that person's a spook, this person's a fed, it's a little bit boy who cried wolf, and I mean, what's your evidence really, you know? It's interesting, Ryan Mata complained that I called him a fed. I never did that. I never even thought about that. I thought he was a jerk, and I probably called him that. But it's interesting that he's complaining about that. The fact that he said that made me think he might be a fed, and he's been pushing Blake like crazy. Blake is definitely a social engineer. It's like beyond doubt now. Had that phone call where, at Chris Martenson's demand, Chris Martenson needs to cease and desist, because he's a known guy who operates under his real name and is going to get sued. By the way, when I say that, that's not a threat. That is a warning, because it will happen, Chris Martenson. You have committed defamation by implication, at least, if not per se defamation. Some people are accusing me of crimes, harassment, deception, fraud, all kinds of things. I'm going to defend my reputation, and Chris Martenson, he can be sued, Gary can be sued, Blake can be sued, stupid Liz Crokin can be sued. So George's brother wants to gin up all these lawsuits. That's fine. All the people around him, they're getting sued. People should ask, actually nobody should do anything. Nobody should bother anyone or take any action other than sponsoring the show on crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com, subscribestar.com, and patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. I'm just saying, in a hypothetical sense, people should consider for a moment how people like Ben Wittes, Adam Sharp, Nina Jankowicz, how do we think they like all this counter-lawfare action? Those guys seem confused. I don't think they like it. In fact, I'm confident they don't. But I didn't start any of this. I'm just trying to end it. Now, back to the title for today, Decoding the Charlie Kirk Assassination. It's a bit of a video compression joke that I'm sure most people didn't find funny. There's a couple of video engineers who watch the show who love that. But we got to talk about video encoding and video decoding. Because Chris Martenson, and there's another, I forget this idiot's name, he says he's Dutch, living in New Jersey. I don't believe that. This is a moron social engineer who's trying to help Blake, who wanted to take up the evidence bounty challenge, but he didn't want the money, he just wanted to prove me wrong. And here's what I've said. People have heard me say this. I mean, let's go to the video, because this came up a week after Charlie Kirk was shot, so 3 weeks ago. Now remember, if you haven't been following since then, Zeb Boykin is a U.S. Marine. I don't think he's active in the U.S. Marines, but you're supposed to still call them Marines. He's a guy sitting at a desk, but he is a Marine. And he's got some video production skills, definitely more than the average person, more than the average Marine, I suppose. He has his live stream, and I saw he came out early on the Charlie Kirk assassination with ballistics analysis and all kinds of firsthand experience with weapons that I don't have. And so I was interested in watching his show, and I liked how he presented. I thought he was an interesting guy, intelligent, or at least he seemed to be. Looks can be deceiving. And I started communicating with him, and we said, sure, we'll do a show. Then he went on to Owen Schroyer, and Owen, I've mentioned this many times, including in the debate with Dr. Martenson, Owen had the same response that I did. Zeb showed this video that I won't show right now. It's the image from, an image is taken right there in the background. That's the video of Charlie sitting there. So Zeb was the first person to present that video, and Owen said, wow, That's the highest quality video I've seen so far. And I said the same thing in my head while watching Owen's show. And everybody now has noticed that there's been a paucity, a lack, very small amount of high quality video coming out from this event, which is surprising because so many people have phones that shoot certainly HD, if not 4K, sometimes even 60 frames per second. Very, very high quality video acquisition, high bit rate on the phone. It's sort of remarkable, but everybody knows a lot of people have this, so it's weird when all the videos that we see look like they're coming from an iPhone 5 and it's Facebook in 2009 or something. What is going on with that? It's weird. So weird that everybody noticed it. And then so right away, one of the first videos that I found, even before I saw that Zeb video, was the Adam Bartholomew video. Everybody knows I contacted Adam. He's been on the show a bunch of times. Adam is an excellent baseline for the way that normal, honest people act. I called him up. I said, I saw your video on YouTube. Nothing weird about that. I said, I noticed it cut out. His brain must have said, yeah, that's right. I explained to him why I thought it was happening. I think he was intrigued. I asked him what he recorded the hour and 9-minute video on. I presumed he had recorded it on a phone like this, like I'm doing. And he said, no, I have this whole complicated setup. Everybody saw the show with Adam. I was fascinated by it. We got to the bottom of how he was able to make a recording, even though it seemed an electronic warfare ISR drone from a US military jet, sort of experimental, one of two. It seemed, strong evidence seemed to indicate that Adam was subject to an electronic exploit from the high accuracy detection and exploitation system deployed by the US Army. We saw all that public FAA radar data of the jet flying around. There was a lot of evidence, and since then, another video has emerged where a woman is on TikTok saying, hey, I was recording at 11:22, then the video cut, then everybody's running around. She also suffered a video dropout at the same moment, and audio at the same moment that Adam did. And so I started to think, it seems like if there's two people who had this, there could be more. And if there's a program going on where during the assassination, an electronic exploit is being deployed to stop Adam and this woman and whoever else, maybe a lot of people, from making recordings or doing live stream broadcasts, but yet there are certain videos that came out right away. Does that indicate that somebody was trying to control the media around this Charlie Kirk assassination so that only authorized imagery of it got out? Now, I mean, obviously this is a hypothesis based on evidence, but there's a lot of evidence that suggests that that is what was happening. And when you think about it logically, the reason to want to do that is that if you control the media that's going out, you can control the narrative. You can cause people to believe a certain thing. It's just like movie editing. You don't just wave around a camera and hope you get something that makes sense. You plan out how you lay out each shot, what you show people, what you don't show people, which angle. All those different things get planned out. So Zeb goes on to Owen Schroyer's show, and he's got this video, and he shows it to Owen, and it looks super sharp, and I saw that right away. And I had already been in communication with Zeb, so I started talking to him about this video, and I asked him if he could send it to me, and he did. And we did a show about it, and you know, among other things. That was on September 18th. Let me play you a clip from that show where we discover this, what I allege is a 50 caliber, could be 45, could be less. I'm not a caliber expert, but there's a bullet, I think, flying at Charlie Kirk's head. And I think it's been launched from a PCP gun, a pre-charged pneumatic gun, because I'm told, even though they're colloquially referred to as air rifles, this compressed gas propelled type of weapon, they've become extremely sophisticated and powerful, and they're used for big game hunting and they can fire projectiles 500 feet per second and faster. I've found several models that specifically state a muzzle velocity of 500, 520 feet per second, and given a 50 caliber projectile, that generates, I think, 400 foot-pounds of force, certainly lethal force. Not like a supersonic rifle, but these are deadly weapons. So anyway, I saw this thing, and then Zeb and I were talking about it. Let's listen to that for a moment. You've got a dot right there, and as I go back one frame and forward one frame, see that dot where this guy's arm is moving, right? That dot, and now I'm going forward again, and then Charlie is hit. And you also see it's sort of, isn't it?
It's in his hair. Go on the right.
We got to really, what I'm going to do from this, I'm going to do one of my zooms in on this dot. Here's the dot.
Go next frame.
Yeah.
To the
back?
No, forward one.
And then he's hit. Oh, I see. Wait a minute. So wait a minute. Why is there another dot there now? I see it right on this guy's hair. That's so weird. And all the way in the upper right-hand corner, that dot.
Yep.
Okay, I got to do an After Effects study of this, but I mean, Zeb, this is incredible that you've obtained this original camera footage. I mean, this is why I'm always such a stickler for, we have to have the original footage, because otherwise we're just not able to make any kind of sensible evaluation. So you've got, basically, I'm stepping back here, okay? This is before Charlie is shot. Let's go one frame at a time. I'm going forward now. Charlie is talking. We see, here's the dot, then he's hit, but then there's another dot. Now, you know what? That could also be a video compression glitch of some kind, because we've got something moving very, very quickly, and that does match the trajectory.
Well, it would be after the shot, and so we would expect it if it's an exit wound on the neck, which I think we are.
But wait a minute. It is appearing on the frame. It is appearing in the video after the shot, but it could be a video codec getting confused about where something was and now isn't.
I think it's too much. You're trying to grant too much.
He seems very not into even the remote possibility. I've watched that clip a number of times now because Chris Martenson has accused me of trying to deceive people about something when from the very first moment I became aware of that thing. You can see in that clip. First I was confused by it. Zeb seemed very aware. I'm searching for it. All that back and forth, where's the dot? And I put those arrows in there for today so people could understand, because it's quite confusing. And Zeb seemed to know all about it, but he didn't say, yeah, I saw that and it's strange. He's convinced it's an exit wound. At that time, I was convinced that, okay, this is what he sees, this is what he's convinced of. But right away, it came into my head that might be a video compression error, because I've seen errors like that before. And I wasn't able to articulate it in that moment as well as I hope I will right now, but I want to talk about this in detail because it's important for people to understand. And I gotta say, I never imagined I would touch on this subject on Crowdsource the Truth, but it gets back to, sort of my old days. Let's go this way so I'm not in the wind when I'm talking about it. But we got to talk about MPEG video encoding. So what is MPEG video encoding? MPEG is the Motion Picture Experts Group. And, back in the late 80s or the early 90s, when they said, hey, forget all this video tape. We want to start putting video on discs and chips and this thing called the internet. But there's a problem, because video, high definition video, 1920 by 1080, 1,900 individual pixels by 1,080 individual pixels. It's something like 2.2 million pixels on your screen for every frame. And there's 30 frames per second. And everybody knows computers store things in bits. Oh, I've heard of that, Jason, but what's a bit? Think of it like a light switch, like a little register. Either the light is on or it's off. It's a 1 or a 0. And how many light switches can you have? Think about this wall. Let's say we put 2.2 million light switches on this wall, and every single one of them needs to be switched on or off. And by the way, for each 2.2 million pixels, there's 24 bits, because it's 8 bits of red, 8 bits of green, 8 bits of blue. So, I mean, do that math. 24 times 2 million, what is that number? It's huge. Right now, this video is coming to you at about 3 million bits per second. So how do we get all those pixels? That's just one frame. How do we get all those sent over the internet? Well, they use compression. And what is that? It's a mathematical representation of an image. So you start with an image that has all that information in it, and then you encode it with a mathematical algorithm. And so part of the way it works is, let's start with a still image. So right here, I'm standing here. There's people walking. That's changing. But the ground, it's mostly the same. Large areas of the ground are all the same. So there's 3 different types of MPEG frames. And the first one we want to talk about is an I frame. The I stands for intra-frame encoding. It's just going to do this mathematical equation within this frame. And this is essentially a key frame. You can see those little squares I've made. The frame gets broken down into what's called macro blocks, tiny little areas of the image that are each sort of anticipated on their own. And so in this image, each one of those squares, they could say, well, let's separate the brightness and contrast image, sort of the black and white part of this image, from the color part of this image, because the human visual system, it's way more sensitive to brightness and contrast than it is to color. And what we'll do is we'll take each of those squares, and where the sky isn't changing and maybe where the buildings aren't changing, we'll just say, hey, that's a bunch of squares. Instead of remembering every single pixel, we'll remember it's this many pixels of this color, they're over there, and we'll remember that, and it becomes a bit of math, almost like a code word that makes it easier for the computer to remember, less light switches needed to store that. So then the next type of frame that we're concerned with, that's good for a still image, but we want 30 of these per second, and it's still pretty big, this I frame. That's the complete keyframe. So the next type of frame we're interested in is called a P frame, which technically is a predictive frame, but I think it's easier to remember if you think of it as referring to the previous frame. And so we start with that frame in the middle, and the computer says, well, okay, the building isn't moving, the sky isn't moving quickly enough for us to notice anything in 1/30th of a second, so there's all these squares that can stay the same as the previous frame. So it saves a lot of space by not actually having 30 of these I-frames. It'll have one I-frame and then a bunch of frames that are calculated based on the previous frame. So it could go I-frame, P-frame, 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 P-frame. It could have a lot of them. It depends. It depends mostly on what's going on in the video. If we do this, we're really taxing the video codec, and you might even notice it. The quality might reduce, versus if I stand here and so much of the video, except for my mouth and a couple of tiny little people moving around, it stays the same. This is less taxing on the video codec, the compression decompression algorithm that sends this video to you over the internet. Okay, so the third type of frame that we have to worry about when we're talking about MPEG compression and decompression is what's called a B frame. Now remember, the I frame is only compressed within the frame, intra-frame compression. The P frame is the first type of inter-frame compression, comparisons between frames, and that's based on the previous frame. So as we move forward in the video, we can look at the previous frame, and if there's no change, we have a new frame. The third type of frame is a B frame, which is a bidirectional predictive frame, meaning it's looking backward and forward. And why would you do that? Well, in this particular scene, imagine we had an airplane fly by this city. And, maybe we're far away and the airplane appears to be flying slowly or quickly or whatever. But as it flies in front of that CN tower or whatever that is, there's certain frames where the airplane will be in front of the building and we see the airplane blocking the building. And then other frames where it moves away and the building is back. So by going back and forward and looking and comparing, this thing is making predictions about what the frames should be, how they should be encoded, and basically what they're going to look like. And again, this is software which John Cullen has said, I don't understand how it works. That made me very upset when he said that. He seems to have forgotten about it. But the software works, but it's designed, it's not a person, it can't think. It's an algorithm, and it's been created by people to work at its most efficient way in the most common types of scenes. People walking around and talking, things moving at human speed, cars driving. Sure, you can photograph bullets, but actually this type of video compression is not what you would normally use to do this kind of high-speed photography that everybody is looking at on, ballistic high speed and the high speed guys and these different YouTube channels. Sure, when you see it on YouTube, the final output is encoded with this type of MPEG encoding, but they're not in their camera recording with these sort of things in the way that your iPhone does. Now, let's talk about the old way of making movies. People remember Edward Muybridge, or if you've studied photography like I have, you're going to know that Edward Muybridge was, I think, a British dude. And somebody was like, these British guys, Hawkins would tell us they like death pool betting. And they like to sit around in White's gambling hall and bet on all kinds of things. And as the story goes, somebody had a bet that there's no way that all 4 of the horse's feet are off the ground during the trotting or whatever it is that what does a horse do? Galloping. They had some bet. And Muybridge said, it's an interesting question. Now, photography existed at the time. This was 18-something. But they didn't have motion picture photography. Thomas Edison hadn't invented the motion picture camera. Lumiere brothers had not invented the cinematograph yet. There's really no one person that they say this person invented motion pictures. It was a series of inventions that led to the development of motion pictures. But what Muybridge did was he set up an array of still cameras, and somehow, I don't remember the details, but he had a way of triggering them sequentially, one camera right after the next. He didn't have a digi trigger like I allege was used to simultaneously fire a high-speed rifle. We got a lot of weird stuff going on here today. It's Roach Man. Giant roach. Oh yeah, Men in Black. Pretty good costume. Anyway, back to Muybridge. I don't know exactly how he triggered the cameras, but he did. He had some way of triggering them sequentially so that he could capture all these frames of the horse. And so this was one of the precursors to motion picture film. And you could still shoot a movie with motion picture film if you're Quentin Tarantino. I mean, it's very expensive and it's pretty outmoded, but people have seen reels of motion picture film where each frame, you got 24 frames per second, and each frame is a discrete photograph like this. You could pick it up, you could cut it with a scissors, and if you have 24 frames and you want only 12, you could cut out half of them, and it's frames. But when you're dealing with MPEG compressed digital video, it doesn't work like that. It's not 30 discrete pictures. It's a mathematical formula that was calculated whenever that's the weed man. It was calculated whenever the MPEG file was encoded. And in the case of something you record in your phone, the individual photographs, the discrete frames, they're thrown out at the time that you record the video on the phone. The phone is doing an MPEG encode in the phone in real time, because an iPhone doesn't have enough memory to store 240 frames per second uncompressed like we were talking about before. We've got all those, pixels and bits. It's just too much data. What do we have going on over here? It would be too much data to store 240 individual uncompressed frames per second. So they get stored in a memory buffer and encoded in a stream into an H.264 or EVC, H.265, one of these subsets of MPEG that are designed to do various different things, and each of them have their own quirks, motion vectors, and different algorithms of how they calculate motion and encode your video, essentially based on what I was saying with these I frames, P frames, and B frames. And so it's important to remember that when you're doing this at 30 frames per second, it's sort of like driving your car 30 miles an hour. Everything in the car is like totally within the envelope of what it's designed to do. Now you could I have a modest SUV. It drives fine. Put it in cruise control, 55 miles an hour, it's all good. You could go 100 miles an hour in the car, and I've done that. Not 100, I've gone 90 or something in the car, and it's all right. I mean, it's not a Ferrari or anything like that. I can't say the car isn't designed to do that, but in other words, you're on the edge of the envelope. Go to 100 miles an hour. You're on the edge of the performance envelope of the car, and a slight, unusual occurrence, a bump in the road, where at 55 the wheel might just do this. You could flip in the car. So you're in kind of an extreme condition. And it's the same thing with shooting at 240 frames per second and recording it as an MPEG encoded stream. Yeah, it works, but any sort of aspect of the software algorithm that encodes the video that is prone to error, it's right up against the wall where that sort of error can occur. So now I'm talking about our scene with the dot that our buddy Zeb is giving me all kinds of body language right out of the gate where he knows what I'm saying isn't right. And he's saying, no, you have to go forward to see the dot that you think is back, Jason, because it's not a bullet flying at Charlie, it's a bullet flying away from Charlie. Could have been a mistake, or could it be that the video was already out and then Zeb realized that that artifact was in there and he had a problem and he hoped nobody would notice it and he needed to make sure that nobody put the pieces together. But let's go back to that dot and why this Dutch idiot in New Jersey, if that's where he really is wrong. That guy had a theory that said, Jason, I'm going to come on your show and debunk you because first he was telling me something that didn't make a lot of sense to me, and then what happened was we had that video of a van with the door opening, remember? The Royal Grift, which is a YouTube channel that I don't know the name of the person. I feel like I have spoken to that person, but I could be wrong. Maybe I've just watched her videos. When she says the Royal Grift, I think she's talking about either Meghan Markle or Chris Boozy. That is a person who I found out about because she was making a lot of videos about Meghan Markle, and that drew the attention of Chris Boozy. And people will recall that I sued Chris Boozy. Boozy got sued. He's still getting sued. That stupid asshole. Anyway, I like the Royal Grift. She's smart. And she's sharp. She found that video with a van, with the door opening, like literally a second before Charlie gets shot. How can you ignore that? It's at least suspicious, and certainly coincident with the shot. Now, some people have said, it seems like the shooter would be in the van. John Cullen insists, no, it's too high up. Well, I mean, once again, when we're analyzing a three-dimensional scene from one two-dimensional view, and we don't know what kind of lens that person was on. Look at this. Here's the iPhone. This is, what is this? iPhone 16. And here we have the 0.5, I forget what the focal length is. I think this is about 24. This is the normal lens, it's about 50. And then this is the 5X, so I guess it's 120. Okay, and what it does is it makes it a little difficult to gauge the distance to things. And also, I'm giving you a comparison on a various array of lenses there. But the point is, when you're looking at a two-dimensional scene through a telephoto lens that you don't know what the setting is the person close on a wide lens or a normal lens, or are they far away on a telephoto lens? You don't really know. And so when the Royal Grift saw that other video, and I can't find the original video, it's strange. It's another one of these videos that just not really widely released. Can't find it. But when she found that, it seemed that a guy who looked like he was standing right next to Charlie Kirk's tent, he was all the way on the other side of the tunnel. And I said, wait a minute, that guy is way lower down and further away. That's the guy who the bullet passes right over his hair. Zeb said it's in his hair. That guy looks like he's standing right next to the tent in the side view that we have from Zeb, but he's quite far away. And he now gives us a vertical scale of the top of the opening of the van. The bullet could have come right out of the van. Or if, and by the way, that's still just one additional view. We don't know if the camera moves up, down, you might have a better view. If you had a third view higher up, you'd have a much better view. But the point is, we're getting a better sense of that van. First of all, it was there. We didn't know that before. So there's a lot of views of that scene where the van is completely obscured. People who say no, the bullet couldn't come out of the back of the van, some of those people think perhaps the door opening was a distraction to hide visually some other position in the tunnel where the shooter could have been. But I think it's undeniable that it's certainly weird that this van right behind him that does have an angle, and I'm not saying they shot him through the tent. I don't think anything hit the tent. Got a helo. Cool, right? So we have that van. And seems like the perfect place for a shooter to be hiding to me. But back to the shot with the bullet that appears to be moving in reverse. See, there's additional problems there. In that the video that we've seen is 20 frames per second. And how did it get that way? Well, it's been transcoded. Now, how do I know that? Because remember, I had that properties panel from FFmpeg where I, sort of closely interrogated the properties of that file, and it told us that it was encoded using the HDR high 10 profile, and that is not a video that the iPhone can produce. The iPhone uses the normal 10 profile for HDR. And maybe somebody put it into HDR to make it seem like it wasn't shot at 240 frames per second. Like, see, this video has fingerprints on it from somebody who is sophisticated, but not sophisticated enough to fool me. And I'm sorry to say this, and I can't prove that it was him, but of course, the most likely suspect for having transcoded this 240 frame per second file to 20 frames is Zeb. And when I started saying that, he said, "Oh, that's very Jewish of you," and he blocked me, which was really a pathetic thing for him to do. Zeb, you're a piece of shit for doing that. I treated you like a regular nice guy, even though one of the first things you said to me was you don't like Jewish people. That is an ignorant fucking way to be. Have you met every single Jewish person? And what I'm doing has nothing to do with being Jewish. It has to do with you being a suspicious, slimy character. You were the source of the 20 frame video. When I asked you where you got it, you told me you couldn't even remember. Then, when I started talking about it, you were the source of the 30 frame per second version of the video. And I asked you where you got that, you couldn't remember that either. This is the most important and highest quality piece of evidence. How does he not remember? how does the person who sent it not see the videos where we're talking about it and get back in touch and say, hey man, that was me? So then we go to the suspicious party, Samir Masi, who everybody heard my phone call with that dunce, where he says, oh, I recorded the video. I ate my pizza and I was gonna get my free pizza. And then I went outside and I had a great view of Charlie Kirk. So I took this first ever horizontal video in my life. And then I went back inside, switched back to vertical video mode for whatever inexplicable reason, and recorded a video where in his own voice, he says, what's happening? And someone tells him somebody got shot. And he says, somebody got shot? And he's obviously shocked. So either this guy has the worst short-term memory problem of anybody we've ever met, or he's lying about recording the video. And I suspect he's lying because I was offering him $250 to pay for a copy of the video, not the worldwide exclusive rights. All he would have had to do to even entertain the offer, not even to give me the video, would be to do a screen capture of the properties panel in the video player. Why would he object to that so much? I'm not doing anything for free. Dude, it would take you less time than sending 20 messages back and forth on TikTok and spending 5 minutes with me on the phone to do a screen capture and send me an email. It doesn't make sense that someone who was interested in getting $250 wouldn't want to do click and send. Doesn't make sense to me. And then he said, I'll give you the video, but I have to think about it. And I was like, what are you talking about? He said he's talking to other people. Then when I asked Blake, did you get it from Samir Masi? He practically choked on the phone. Did people hear that? I had to say, Blake, are you still there? And then he pretended I was cutting out. What Blake didn't know is I wasn't calling him from a cell phone. I wasn't cutting out. I was on a fiber optic line in my apartment on a hardwired phone. And he was in his office, also on a landline phone, because he wouldn't answer his cell phone. And by the way, to the whole Blake, oh, I'm harassing him. Chris Martinson ordered me to call Blake and give him the money. The bounty. From the evidence bounty. So I would have if he had produced legitimate evidence that he had the original video and that it proved me wrong. So this is another question that came up with the idiot in New Jersey, allegedly, who says he's Dutch, but can only use a fake account to promote Blake. He said, oh, you're never going to give anyone the money. How could someone prove you wrong? Let me put a finer point on it. Here's how you could prove me wrong. You could produce the original video, and you could show me either that it's 240 frames per second and this dot is moving in reverse, and we'll get back to how that happened. Or you could produce the original video and say, see, it wasn't 240 frames per second, you are wrong. But you can't just be like Blake and go onto an X space with Diligent Denizen or whatever that guy's name is. Wow, this guy's asking for it. You better be careful if the cops see that. That guy's crazy. Anyway, the point is, Blake, he produced a video on an X space, which I was not in. Well, I was in there anonymously. And he had a hidden video on YouTube. You know, you post it unlisted, and no one can find it unless they have the URL. But I did a screen capture and I got the URL while whatever the person who runs that X space, you know, I don't know who Diligent Denizen is. But he's running the video and he says, oh, this is a 60 frame per second new version of the video, 4K, that nobody has seen before. And what I believe they were trying to do there is to prove Jason's wrong. This couldn't be 240 frames per second because the iPhone can't shoot 4K at 240 frames per second. The iPhone, it is limited to HD at 240 frames per second. And that would be their way to prove me wrong. Plus, if I didn't have the file, they could have said, oh, this has been produced and Jason is lying. But what I did was I captured the thing, I went to that URL, I downloaded the video, and it was uploaded to YouTube at 4K. But again, that was transcoded. You know, Blake is another possible suspect for transcoding the video. I don't mean to implicate Zeb, and to be clear, I can't prove that he's the one who transcoded the video. He's the most likely suspect. Blake is the second most likely suspect, and Samir Masi is the second or third. But Blake has transcoded other videos. He had an allegedly 4K version of Adam Bartholomew's video. I noticed that he had uploaded it somewhere at 4K, and I said to myself, what's the point of doing that? It's shot at HD. You're not getting anything out of it to boost it up to 4K. That's just interpolated, made-up pixels. But anyway, the other thing about the video that he had put in this hidden URL is that when you step through it frame by frame, motion only appeared after every 2 frames, meaning he had just taken a 30 frame per second video and doubled it. There was no additional motion in there. So the point is, Blake has been doing a lot of shenanigans with these videos to try to fool people with them. And so, right, back to our Dutch buddy in New Jersey. So he is presuming that the frames in an MPEG video are like a stack of cards or a film strip. And that is not correct. You can't just cut out individual frames from an MPEG video. So when I was speaking the other day and I said the way you get from 240 to 20 or 240 to 30 is by taking 1 out of every 8 frames, I was trying to simplify this 45-minute conversation about how MPEG video works to give people a generalized idea. It's actually not true, because remember, we go back to our I, P, and B frames. We don't actually have 30 discrete frames or 20 discrete frames or 240 discrete frames. We have a certain number of I frames that then yield a certain number of P and B frames, and those are calculated based on all kinds of parameters, including the frame rate. So when we start with something photographed at 240 frames per second, and the reason why I say that dot is presented in the wrong place is because we have 3 photographs of it. And when I put them in that composite image, again, I did that to simplify all this complicated stuff so that people would understand what I'm getting at. But certainly Chris Martenson is not able to explain it in the level of detail that I'm going to right now. So he hasn't disproven anything. The fact is those dots were photographed in those positions. I do not believe that it could be coincidental that a bug or a piece of dust would be in a perfect line directly to the back of Charlie's C2 vertebrae, where an instant later he has an injury at the front of his neck and a disruption at his shirt that looks like something coming out of his neck, and that they're equidistant at about 2.5 feet apart, and that the calculation for a projectile going 500 feet per second, photographed at 240 frames per second, would be about 2 to 2.5 feet. And so, if I'm right, and this bright high contrast dot is photographed in 3 frames, when the thing goes to create a new encoded set of frames, and it's doing this bi-directional, wait a minute, is there something there? Is there not something there? It says, well, if there was only 1 frame of dot, that might be noise or a piece of dust or an inconsequential tiny little element of the image that we can get rid of and not substantially change the image. Or it might say, wait a minute, we have 3 of these dots. So it's something and it's moving. And it can be confused because 3 is not a lot, but it's more than 1 or 2. And I didn't write this software. I haven't consulted with the Apple engineers who did, but I have a feeling that 3 occurrences of a high contrast dot moving in a very specific vector could be just enough to trigger the algorithm to say this is part of the image, include it. Plus, when we have three idiots, namely Samir, Blake, and Zeb, interacting with this file in unknown ways, encoding it with probably incorrect settings, 20 frames, HDR, high 10 profile. We don't know how they set this thing to go. And just like driving your car, your SUV at 100 miles an hour, one little bump, one little extreme condition, like a fast-moving high contrast dot, you are right on the performance edge of this software and where any errors are likely to occur. So anyway, that is what I think happened. I think that dot was photographed in the iPhone in those three positions right before it struck Charlie's head, because it was a 240 frame per second video with a 1/15,000th of a second shutter, sufficient to freeze the action to about a 0.2 inch, 0.3 inch, whatever it is, blur in 1/15,000th of a second, making it appear essentially like a high contrast dot. And that was enough of a group of pixels for the encoder to see it and register it and realize it's got to be included in the image, but it's moving so quickly in such a different way than anything else in the image that it becomes confused. And this bi-directional forward and backward comparison that results in these computed frames created what we saw there. That's my scientific explanation. So if somebody wants to prove me wrong, there are a couple of ways. You could prove that that is not how MPEG encoding works. You could prove that that was a bug going in a perfect straight line. I don't think you'd be able to do that. That's where the Dutch New Jersey guy started, with red circles going around some kind of bug, and I was like, what the hell are you talking about? The other thing that you could do is you could produce the original video. Now, with that, see, now that we're a month after the fact and I've revealed all of these details and facts about what's wrong with the video, and we have good reason to believe that people like Blake have been trying to create fake versions of this video, like a 4K 60 frame, going to be very skeptical of any, proof of this original video. So people could fake metadata. And I'm not saying I won't accept anything as the original video, but where has this original video producer been? It remains on offer. $1,900. What's going on with the helicopter? It's been on offer for, what are we at, a week? Nobody's come forward with the video. Samir, he said he wanted $250. He was going to give it to Blake. Blake almost had a heart attack when I started mentioning Samir's name. Deleted his Twitter account, brought his Twitter account back. Then he said, I'm threatening him, and Anons have been calling him. I didn't give anybody his phone number. His receptionist gave me his cell phone and told me to call him. So I called him, he didn't answer. I called him again, he didn't answer. I waited a little while. I called him again, he didn't answer. Then I called the office and said, what the hell, you just told me to call this guy's cell phone, he's not answering. Then they connected me to him. None of this is harassment. So when people go and accuse somebody of harassment, you should be aware that's a crime. And now, I'm not a lawyer and this isn't legal advice, but I am warning Liz Crokin that she has until I get back to my apartment. I sent her a cease and desist on Twitter. If she didn't see it, that's going to be her problem, because she is going to get sued. I don't like her, and that's not because of some arbitrary thing that somebody else said to me. It's because of years of stupid things that she has done, and because I think she's a social engineer aligned with George Webb, his idiot brother, and all these other people who have been trying to ruin my business and ruin my life for years. And thanks to everybody who supports the show by going to crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com, sponsoring on there, or going to subscribestar.com or patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth, or by going to X and following me on X at JG_CSTT. Or listen, if you like the direction this is going in and you want to increase the bounty, you can do that. It's still open. Go to crowdsourcethetruth.org Read the terms of service. That's the other thing. All these people who want to participate, they want to dictate the terms of this offer. It's not that you call me up with stupid crap and suddenly I owe you $1,900. You got to read this. This is a legally binding agreement. If you want to put in money or if you want to compete for the bounty, there's a set of terms laid out there. Read it. Adding money or participating equal you agree to the terms. This is how it works. It's not going to an anonymous Twitter account or some jackass social engineer who calls me up and says, Chris Martenson just proved you wrong. Chris Martenson doesn't know what the hell he's talking about, and I've just explained it, okay? So this is a video encoding error, which is what I said to Zeb the first second I saw the thing. And now that I've had time to think about it and make those graphics to explain it to everybody, I hope it's clear. So again, if you want to say I'm wrong, you can't just look at it and say, no, it's moving away, which is what John Cullen has been doing. You need to gain a better understanding of MPEG encoding and decoding than I have, and explain to me how I don't understand it and what I've got wrong. And beyond that, I think you would need to ask whoever it is at Apple Computer who designed the long GOP MPEG encoding that they use to shoot 240 frames per second, and ask them if some unknown idiot took a 240 frame per second file, transcoded it with the wrong settings to 20 frames per second, then to 30 frames per second. Is it possible that what Jason is saying could happen? And I believe the answer will be yes. It certainly won't be no, you can't prove, or you can prove that he's wrong. It will not be that. You're not going to be able to prove that I'm wrong. That person's out of their mind buying a Lucid. Company's going to go out of business. But that's why I've been so boldly saying that nobody's going to be able to prove me wrong. We have it. Those dots would not be there if they weren't photographed. The reason they're being displayed out of order is all of that predictive frame generation from previous frames, bi-directional temporal prediction that I'm talking about. It's called a bi-directional interframe predictive encoding. I mean, it's looking back and forward. And this is an error that has occurred where something is rendered in the wrong frame. We have a picture of it. It didn't invent that picture of it. That was photographed. The only logical way it could have been photographed is if it was going 500 feet per second and photographed at 240 frames per second. We got 3 images of it. Then it hits him in the head and kills him. All this stuff with it's, oh, the coroner said this. Let's address that. Other people who I don't know said, oh, Candace Owens just proved you wrong. Send Candace Owens the $1,900. First of all, she hasn't contacted me. She hasn't presented evidence. I heard her say something to do with the coroner's report. Did she see it? Did someone tell her they saw it? And even if they did, why, what's the logic where we say, well, the FBI is lying, the cops are lying, the university is lying, but the coroner is telling the truth? Have people ever heard of this guy, Fahmy Malek? He was the coroner in Arkansas when Bill Clinton was the governor. People who, jumped out of windows, shot themselves twice in the back, and cut their own heads off were listed as suicide. So why are we suddenly believing a coroner's report? It's very strange to me. This is a forensic analysis of digital evidence. And just because you don't understand what I'm saying doesn't mean I'm wrong, Chris Martenson, you fucking asshole. He demanded that I go back and apologize to Owen Schroyer and repent. All this stupid shit that angry asshole said. So I contacted Owen Schroyer and said, hey, Dr. Martenson believes he's proven me wrong and wants to do another debate. Will you host it? Owen said yes. Chris Martenson refused. I'm ready to do it, Chris. Let's do it. Where's your rebuttal to this, you stupid asshole? People say, oh, no ad hominem attacks. These people are trying to destroy my reputation, getting people all over me. See, when they, Gary did the same thing that Blake is doing. Oh, Jason, you threatened my family by saying I'm a Nazi. Well, change your logo. Don't use Nazi imagery on your company, and then people like me won't think you're a Nazi. I'm allowed to say I think Gary's a Nazi for issuing true threats over the internet, acting like a Nazi jerk, and having a company whose logo is a neo-Nazi logo. Causes me to think he's a Nazi. So I didn't tell anybody to go to his business. I also called his business. These guys, it's the same thing, right? Blake says, oh, Jason posted pictures of my family. No, I didn't. He had a picture that he posted on Facebook with no privacy settings of him, his kid, and his wife. I blurred out the face of the kid and the wife because I have no beef with them. I posted that photo because he was at a Turning Point USA church, and somebody already wrote to me and said, oh yeah, all these churches in Texas had various financial scandals and then they merged or something. I don't know. We got to look into that because you know what? I know someone who's an expert in nonprofit fraud. And I wonder if he's already begun looking into Turning Point USA. And I wonder if Blake is involved in this church, this Turning Point USA church. Because why would a person, whether it's Blake or Samir Masi or Zeb, the hateful, ignorant shithead that he is, why would these people want to associate themselves with one of the most important pieces of evidence in an ongoing murder investigation and manipulate it in ways that are deliberately deceptive, if that's what they did? I haven't proven that in court yet. I might get a chance to. This is all expert testimony, by the way. The defense counsel can contact me. I'm available to testify. And bring up any expert you want. As I've said, no expert in any field. Certainly not stupid Zeb Boykin, certainly not John Cullen, and certainly not the malicious liar, Dr. Chris Martinson. Those guys cannot prove me wrong. They simply do not have the knowledge or the experience. They don't know what they're looking at. Maybe Zeb does, maybe he's lying. I don't know. Expended most of the kinetic energy so that by the time it hit his shirt, that's all it had the energy to do was stretch out the shirt. And people say, oh, the bullet stretched out his shirt. Well, here's the thing. If you shoot a bullet into water or some body or the dirt or cotton wadding or amount of energy, it out of energy. Time is hitting the caught. Realize it's strange, but when people say bullets do strange things, I think that's the kind of strange thing they're talking about. Not going up through his chest and exploding his heart and ricocheting around like a pinball machine and popping out his throat. What the hell are you talking about? How ridiculous does that sound? Chris Martinson is an asshole who needs to retract that video and issue a public apology that stays pinned to the top of his stupid Twitter account, or he's going to get sued too. That's not a threat, that's a warning, Dr. Martinson, you fucking asshole. Anyway, that's the show. Sorry for people who don't like cursing or me disparaging other people, but after 9 years of people trying to destroy my life, make it impossible for me to earn a living, lie to disparage me and defame my character, this is what they get. I call a spade, and I call a fucking asshole like Chris Martinson a fucking asshole. You fucking asshole. So there you go. Have a nice day, everyone. Enjoy the weekend. And please, link this video, send it to Chris Martinson. Let him know he's an idiot. Thanks for watching.